Well, welcome to the Thriveology of Living podcast. I am really fortunate to have Gwen Payne with me today. I was fortunate enough to meet her, gosh, it's been about a year ago when I was going through some issues myself. And I don't know, the universe just aligned in the perfect way. And we met, and it has been quite a journey. And I'm really excited to introduce my group of people to you and share all your gifts. So Gwen Payne is from Sedona, Arizona. She lives in Sedona, Arizona, and she's the founder. You're the founder of Inspired Sedona and Breath is Prayer.
Yes.
And she is multifaceted. She's a life coach. She's a breath worker. She does yoga, dance. What was the sexuality coaching and systemic constellation coaching. And so we're just going to have a little visit so you all can get to know Gwen, and we can find out a little bit more about her and how she, what kind of services she offers, and really, understand what brought her to this type of work, and how she works with people, and basically just really understand her gifts. So Gwen, tell us, how did you get involved with all of this?
Well, let's backtrack about 35 years.
Okay.
And um, my mom had invited me to go on a yoga retreat, which
Okay.
ended up actually being a Sufi retreat. But I think she knew that I probably wouldn't have gone on a Sufi retreat at the time.
Right.
I was raised in an atheist agnostic family. So, um, spirituality just really wasn't part of the mix for me. Religion certainly wasn't, but even spirituality. And so I had discovered yoga, also thanks to my mom, and I decided that I would go with her. It'd be a fun mom-daughter trip. And well, I was in for a big surprise. It was very little yoga and lots of, twirling and Enneagram stuff and deep
Wow.
dives into the mystical world of Sufism. And I
Mhm.
loved it. I just absolutely loved it. I just felt right at home. Um, and during that time, there were, the group workshops, and then there was also the opportunity to do private sessions, when we had our time off. And we would sit there at lunch and see this building right across from the this beautiful deck in Montana, and we would see people going in and out over the course of the days that we were there out of this room.
Mhm.
And we would witness the look of rapture, I want to say, of openness,
Yeah.
of almost like a presence of light when people would come out of this room. And so, needless to say, that piqued our curiosity, and we inquired as to what was happening in that room.
Mhm.
And we were told that there was somebody doing breathwork sessions in there. And of course, we kind of scoffed, like most people do who haven't heard of breathwork. Well, what's that going to do for me? I breathe all the time. And we decided to give it a try individually. And that experience was absolutely mind blowing for me. That session was mind blowing for me. So that was my introduction. And I had no idea at the time that I would continue to pursue that, to really devote my life to it. But that happened several years later. I want to say about 10, 11 years later, I stumbled across uh, a breathwork school. It was actually a holistic school, Mind Body Academy of Washington. And I went to a free lecture, and in that lecture, just heard some things that literally made me pull out my wallet and sign up the moment the lecture was done for that school. And
Wow.
the rest is history.
Were you living in Washington at the time?
I spent 9 years in Washington.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Couldn't wait to get out. Apologize to all those who love Washington, but I grew up in North Africa, so I love the sun. The sun is good to me, and it was a very hard time for me. So that was even better for me to have this opportunity to do a deep dive within myself during that time. That education was a year and a half long. It was a combination of hypnotherapy and breathwork combined, which I have found to be the most amazing combination.
Mhm.
And I believe that's why, Sandra, when you first came and experienced my breath work, you were particularly drawn to how I worded things. Is that true?
Right. It is interesting. I had that same kind of reaction when a friend of mine told me about you, and she's saying breath work. And I'm thinking, well, what does she really mean by that? I mean, I had no idea what to expect. And I remember being in there, and when I first walked in, you were so welcoming and so inviting, and how you went over the different types of how we were going to breathe and all that kind of stuff. And it was a group breath work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in the past, or I would say almost all the time, anytime I've gone to a alternative practitioner, I'm always listening to how they speak to me, because oftentimes when we're super relaxed, our unconscious mind's really open. And, how many times have you gone for a massage and you're just feeling so good afterwards, and maybe the massage therapist, not knowing, but might say, oh, you might be really really sore tomorrow. And so I
Mm.
find myself saying in my head, cancel clear, because I don't want to be sore. So my antenna, I thought, I don't know how much I can truly surrender with this woman. So I kept my antenna up. Well, it took me about maybe 5 minutes listening to your languaging. And I'm like, it's cool. I can trust her. And yeah, so I could really tell that you paid attention through guiding us, how you were phrasing things, so that we could get the most out of it and not embed something that we don't want.
Mm. Yeah, I really appreciated that feedback that when you first told me that, when you shared that with me, because it has, been so ingrained for me. I mean, I did that training 20 years ago
Jeez.
and never really thought too much about it since then.
Hmm.
My primary focus is the breath work,
Hmm.
but you helped me to see how incredibly powerful and helpful it was to have learned how to language properly.
Right,
And
right.
so that was definitely an eye opener for me in retrospect. And I just want to share that I loved how you first came into my life, and that you referred a client to me, sight unseen, right?
Right.
So I get this client, Sandra referred me, and I'm thinking, Sandra, who? I hope I
Mhm.
haven't forgotten Sandra, because I've seen thousands of clients. It's possible I could forget a name, but then come to find out we hadn't even met at that time, but that you had not only heard about me, but that you really listened to your intuition.
Mhm.
And I loved that about you before we even actually met in person, that you had uh, listened to your deep intuition, also really recognized and acknowledged where I could help him in a way that you weren't able to, and vice versa.
Mhm.
And this is one of the things I love about you, Sandra, is that
Mhm.
you are all about collaboration and really shining the spotlight on different people, and recognizing that it's not, we're not just in this alone, that we together as a collective can do so much more.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And the thing is, this is what's really interesting about that intuitive hit. When I recommended that he go to you, when he said to me, well, how do you know her? I go, I know her from a friend of mine. And he goes, well, have you ever been to her? And I go, no. And he goes, well, what does she look like? I go, I don't know. you know, I just know you're supposed to go. But then I had that little whisper in my own ear for me,
Mm,
saying, I think this breath work is going to be pivotal in being able for me to surpass this barrier that I have the NLP, I have the hypnotherapy, I have the Reiki, I have more training than you can imagine, and yet there was something I just could not break through on
mm,
this PTSD, and there was something that I had a knowing, a trusting in you, even though I didn't know you. And I that was good for me to trust that. And then I was more than pleasantly surprised. It
mm,
was like I was so imagine how good it feels that when you finally do trust your intuition and
mm-hmm.
it turns out so great.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
good validation for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm grateful to your deep listening to that. Um, yeah, and that the combination, the synergy of different modalities,
For sure.
is so impactful. And that's one of the reasons why I have a lot of different tools, like you do,
Hmm.
in my tool belt, my
Hmm.
pouch, if you will, my healing pouch, because there's no one way, and there's no one way for everybody.
Right.
And also, there's no one way for one person. At one time something might be more impactful than another, whereas down the road we might pivot and use a different modality, or sometimes working with them all together. So one of the things I really like to do with people is to do a deep dive,
Hmm.
where in part we come together for maybe 3 days, virtually or in person, and weaving that combination of modalities together is, it literally can open so many doors,
Hmm.
um, and produce incredible results in a very short amount of time.
Right. Well, you know what's interesting? Think of it when we were younger to do change work. For me, I struggled with social anxiety for 44 years, and I
Mm-hmm.
went to my counselor every week about the social anxiety. And
Mm.
the last counselor I had gone to, I loved her. She was great. However, it never went away.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so fortunate to have these tools that can actually move people quite fast, and that's where I think, having a blend of these modalities, I've always had a dream that even when I'm doing my intensive, that I would have a chiropractor, a breath worker, a acupuncturist, just to be able to move that energy through people. And
Mm-hmm.
I just got to tell you, I rave about you every time I talk to somebody that's interested in doing the training, because I said, I've been doing this 2 week intensive for since 2008, and it was always the first week, about halfway through the first week, you could see people getting really agitated and kind of
Mm-hmm.
like super sensitive, and didn't couldn't be present to learning. And so I started introducing like brain gym, bilateral stimulation, that kind of stuff, and that did
Mm-hmm.
help. But then
Mm-hmm.
when I decided to have you come in class, I mean, that was a game changer. It was
Mm.
just a game changer. It was like people were just like butter. They were like, sure, they were very open to changing, and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel that cognitive dissonance where they felt that agitation. And I think that is so powerful. It is so powerful.
Well, yeah, I mean, for one thing, I am so grateful when you invite me into your groups, because your groups are always so welcoming and receptive. And um, it's a treat to be able to come in and share the breath work with them. They get it.
Mhm.
And to witness, of course, what you're describing. So over, the before and after is, in many ways I would describe as like they're grounded, they're back in their bodies, they've let go of emotional or physical tension that they might have inadvertently been carrying. They're back in alignment. Their resistance perhaps has been released, or at least looked at. So um, it's really just the gift of awareness, but in a truly somatic way, which is, I think, the missing piece. The somatic intelligence, somatic awareness, is a missing and crucial piece in so much of our day-to-day lives. People sitting at their desks all day long, or
Right.
just not living in a natural way.
So for people that don't know about the somatic
Hmm.
experience, tell how does that relate to the healing part?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the healing is always awareness,
Hmm.
and awareness and consciousness are directly linked to the breath. So somatic means of the body, right?
Hmm.
So when we are in our breath, when we are in our body, we are we have to be in the now. Our breath and our bodies are only in the now. So by dropping out of our head, we can start to notice what is it that we're doing with our body to resist the present moment or to open to the present moment.
Oh, interesting.
And a lot of the conditioning that we have received in our lifetime culturally,
Mhm.
in families, schools, et cetera, is to suppress, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, well, for
Yeah.
sure. Yep.
Suppression of emotions, of, all kinds of energy, even just physical expression. So
Yeah.
basically learning to suppress our spontaneous, authentic expression as it
Mhm.
arises moment to moment, walking around instead in a constant state of contraction, right? With a bunch of muck inside, really.
Right.
Or, at the very least, it just feels like a lot of stagnancy, perhaps.
Mhm.
And so when we breathe, we drop into where we are in the moment, and it's without agenda. We're not trying to fix or do anything. We simply open to the breath because there is a greater intelligence within and without. Whatever our word is for that, could be God, nature, anything in between. There is an intelligence that grows the trees, that makes the flowers bloom, that et cetera, right? Heals
Right.
the body. That's where the healing comes from in my mind. And
Mhm.
so we open ourselves back up to what is natural. Life is always wanting us to grow, always wanting us to heal, right? If you
Mhm.
think about, uh, you know, plants, they're they're not getting in their own way. They're just,
Right.
it's all about growth, right? They're just receiving the
Right.
sunlight,
Yeah.
the water, et cetera, et cetera. So if we can get out of our own way, which we do by focusing the mind on the breath,
Mhm.
then we can open up to allow this intelligence to flow through us. And
Mhm.
literally miraculous experiences arise, people remembering things that they've forgotten for the last 20 years, or
Right.
having insights, or landing in their bodies for in a
Mhm.
way that they haven't felt themselves to be for the longest time, experience the inner peace that dwells within them, so on and so forth. I mean, there's
Mhm.
so many different possibilities of
Mhm.
experiences.
Well,
And
that,
sometimes, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, so sometimes that can mean also, a learning. It's just always an opportunity to learn. How is it that I am showing up? Because what
Mhm.
shows up in the breath work is what we're doing all the time. So if I'm holding myself, if I'm resisting emotion, if I'm resisting
Mhm.
sensation, well, this is a powerful learning that
Mhm.
then we can continue to see happening more and more. Do we want that? Typically, no, we don't want that. That's
Right.
stifling ourselves,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So we can, over time, as we bring more and more awareness to that, learn to interrupt that.
Well, and I think too, doing this type of work, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. It's like if you don't even realize how uptight you've been until you're not uptight. I had
Mm-hmm.
an interesting experience just recently. I went for a walk, and the church above the Church in the Rock Chapel Church,
Mm-hmm.
it was open. And so I got on my walk, and I thought, I'm going to go do a meditation up there. So I went up there and I did a meditation, and I've really taken in about your breath work and just about being conscious of me breathing. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think that we just have these little shallow breaths all day long, and we have no idea that's what we're doing. So I went up and did the meditation. I felt so terrific afterwards. I came down, and where I would typically walk around by this house, there's two dogs that always bark at me. And I'm walking around and they're looking at me, no barking. And I'm like, this is interesting. And then I continue to walk down the road and I almost feel like I'm going to trip over something. And I'm like, oh gosh, what is that? And it's a little bunny. It's like, how bunnies usually scamper away? This one didn't scamper. I almost stepped.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh
And I
my
thought,
gosh.
isn't that, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's showing me, this is the outer world showing me, giving me evidence. This is what happens when Sandra slows down.
Mm.
This is what happens when I'm calm within. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have the barking dog, and I animals don't run away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting, and I do believe this work. Um, and from what I've learned from you, when, just to talk a little bit about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
I think art, for a lot of people, their sympathetic nervous system is way turned on, our
Oh
fight
yeah.
or flight. And so we're making
Mm-hmm.
decisions out of that. If we're trying to do change work in the fight or flight system, not
For,
very easy.
forget it.
Yeah,
Forget it.
right. It just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen. And then
Mm-hmm.
introducing this type of work allows
Mm-hmm.
people to be open to do the work. Otherwise, it's almost like they're in full field vision. They can't see what their options are. And
Mm-hmm.
this particular modality really opens people up. So, but that's just one of your modalities that you do is breath work. Tell
Yeah.
us. tell
I
us about
just
other
I
stuff.
just want to jump in though really quick. I'd love
Mhm.
to, Sandra, and thank you. I just want to jump in really quick though and speak to what you were just saying.
Sure.
And the fact that not all breath work is leading towards settling the nervous
Mhm.
system. So
Mhm.
there can be some breath work there. It's just different schools of thought.
Okay.
So some people might go to a breath work and find that everybody is screaming in the room and that there's like this heightened state of arousal. You've
Okay.
never experienced that because you've only experienced breath work with me, right?
Okay. Yep.
And it's all about catharsis and getting things out. But what you were describing earlier is people don't even realize what degree they're tense. It's like, well,
Yeah.
that's because it's the norm for most people to be in a state of control and tension. That's what we've learned early on. It's unconscious, and
Mhm.
it's the day in, day out. So you're absolutely right. When we have an opportunity to let go and to let the nervous system settle, then
Mhm.
we have an opportunity to see the contrast. And that's so important because it, you know it you were able to distinguish,
Mhm.
whereas if you never knew the difference, you wouldn't
I wouldn't
know to
know.
go do it, right?
Mhm.
And that, especially when we do this more often than once, breathwork is often an event
Mhm.
as opposed to a practice. I just have become absolutely passionate about breathwork as a practice. And what I mean by that is 5 minutes a day
Mhm.
and a longer journey if possible, once
Mhm.
a week for a period of time, so that we
Right.
really start to develop this awareness of the contrast we're talking about. And then going back to what I was starting in on saying, that is that there are different schools of thought with breathwork, and some it's like, yeah, you just want to get it all out, but that's putting us back into contraction. So for me, that's not the direction. That doesn't mean people can't
Oh.
cry or experience a surge of emotion, or laugh. I mean, whatever's coming up. But I'm always going to counsel people or guide people into opening to allow that energy to move through and to soften the body so
Mhm.
that we can actually learn to experience emotional states as safe within ourselves.
Mhm.
Because most of us, and this is a collective perspective that of course it's unconscious, are terrified of feeling emotions. They don't feel safe. And many of us have had experiences in our life of emotions not being safe, the way people are acting, maybe even the way we ourselves have acted. But that's
Right.
not authentically feeling an emotion, that's dumping it.
Mhm.
Right. So when we can go into a breath work and open ourselves and feel a wave, a surge of emotional energy move through us, whether it's anger, whether it's grief, whatever it is, and not go back into contraction, where I've actually seen people who have come from these other types of breath work almost self-harming, like yelling and turning purple in the face. And then when I guided them, you can still feel that emotion, but soften. Just let it come
Mhm.
through. And instead of, making a loud noise, just kind of sigh it out.
Mhm.
And they're amazed how quickly and easily and safely they now feel an emotion that they previously were fighting,
Mhm.
um, to be experienced in that way. And this is a huge learning that we can take into our lives. It's safe to feel our emotions. It's safe to breathe into them.
Mhm. Don't you think it's because of one of the reasons is that we feel like we're going to be stuck in them, and so as long as we push them down, like I always say, befriend it. Just it just this it's feelings are not bad, good, right, wrong. They're just
Hmm.
feelings, and
Hmm.
as when we can let them move through us,
Hmm.
then we can realize. I mean, it's kind of strange that we could go from laughing and like laughing like crazy, and within 90 seconds be crying our eyes out. I mean, that's how fast emotions can move through.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Emotions typically move through us in 90 seconds or less. 90 seconds or less. But most of us have this illusion that they're just this like overwhelming thing that is going to, make us go crazy or
Mhm.
do terrible things. But
Mhm.
that's the collective unconscious
Mhm.
beliefs that,
Mhm.
we've been imprinted with. And
Right.
that's what I'm talking about is we can relearn, right? We can relearn
Mhm.
how it feels in this safe, sacred container of the breath work, because emotions are physical energy. And, what you're describing is people don't want to feel them, so they hold them down. And Well, that's pretty ironic, isn't it? So we're going to hold down something we don't want to feel. We're going to hold it inside us now and carry it around for
Right?
days,
So it's
weeks, months, years. I mean, that's
that's what I did. Yeah.
absolutely.
It becomes
Yes,
a stuck state.
that's
It's
right.
like depression, anxiety.
Hmm.
When it becomes your personality,
Hmm.
it becomes a stuck state.
Yeah, an
Like,
identification, like you
yeah,
said. Yeah.
yeah.
Instead of, this is an analogy I like to share with people, is that our true nature is, this sun shining within us, right?
Yes.
And you can really see that luminosity when you look at a baby or a toddler young. You just see this luminosity, right?
Mhm.
And then impulses, waves of energy, whether they're emotional waves of energy, whether they're impulses to move the body or thoughts or what have you, or just like clouds passing over the sun.
Mhm.
Some are big, some are small, some are dark, some are white. Well, for the most part, we're not judging the clouds in the sky, and we know that they're not going to stay stuck. But what we learn to do by suppressing everything when
Mhm.
we're younger and on, that we learn to hold all the clouds in, and it becomes cloud cover over that sun. And
Beautiful.
then we start to think, we're told, oh no, the light is out here. And we look for it in that person, that place, that thing, et cetera, right?
Mhm.
So what we learn to do with breath work is we learn to open up that flow of energy again so the clouds can simply move. And yes, we feel clouds and notice clouds,
Mhm.
but we don't identify them. Nobody's
Mhm.
born angry. Nobody's born anxious. Nobody's born depressed.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm really glad you're saying this because the when you can experience the emotions flowing through you,
Hmm.
it empowers you and it allows you. It's like we're training the body, we're training the mind, we're training our neurology to say it's okay, it's okay. We can. It's empowering to know that I can actually guide my emotions, and I can surrender and let them pass versus being. It's almost like you're because I know this, having the anxiety, it was like I was imprisoned for years.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
and was searching outside of myself, like, Gwen, do you have the key? So and so, do you have the key? Can you let me out of my cage?
Hmm.
And the key was within me.
And
I
also being controlled by those suppressed
oh,
emotions. People have no idea how they're being completely manipulated, if you will, by
mhm,
the emotions that they're trying not to feel. So, for example, if I'm holding fear in my body, I'm going to try to control everything outside of me so that, dear God, please don't let me feel fear.
yeah,
Right. And
right.
that just gets more and more intense and acute, that need to control
Mhm,
over time. There's
mhm,
just more and more and more and more,
mhm.
and our world becomes smaller and smaller. I mean, that's just one example.
Well, for
But
sure, yeah, and
mhm,
that's what we can do as far as like with the coaching work and
mhm,
your family constellation work. Some
mhm,
of these patterns, they're not of us.
that's
They're
right.
of learned patterns. They're
Mhm,
imprinted,
mhm,
and to be able to heal those imprints and get rid of the gestalt of what's holding all of that, all of those patterns together. It's like the glue. Once
yeah.
we can let it go, then
Mhm.
people are just open to experience so much more in life instead of living from the past all the time. That was a traumatic past or a painful past.
Right, and living from a past, as you said, that may not even be theirs. So,
I know, I know, I know.
that's the mind blower right there, is that,
Mhm.
science has actually proven that our genes are carrying down experiences of trauma as well. So it's
Right.
not just our own trauma, it's learned.
Mhm.
It's through the lineage.
Mhm.
Um, Through the collective as well, but certainly through our lineage. And
Mhm.
so this is why I have a multifaceted approach, and I like to bring a lot of different things into the mix, because I do a process, and I forgot to share this one with you, but the passion test, right? So the
Oh,
passion
yeah,
test is an
yeah,
incredible process that I love to do with people when I first start to work with them.
yeah. Mhm.
It's a process that helps us to uncover, what are we most passionate about right now? And that could be just as much an inner state of being as a doing, right? So
Mhm.
typically in our
Right.
culture, we equate passion with doing. But this is really just a knowing from deep within the client, what is most important to them in the moment? What do they value the most, et cetera, et cetera. So we start off with that, because if I'm working with somebody, coaching them, I want to know that right from the gate. This tells me a lot about them. This is going to be the direction we go in, because I could have somebody sit there with me and say, this is what I want to accomplish. This is what I want to achieve. And inside, there may be a voice that's crying out that they're not listening to at all. Like, I need peace. I
Yes.
need to, I need to prioritize my inner life as well. Right.
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
start off that way. Now, I've done the passion test for 11 years. It's an ongoing process. It's a lifelong tool. It's actually a system, which is what I really love about it. But,
Mhm.
you know, the passions aren't always the same, and they'll always even change within themselves. So some, are going to last a short time, some are going to last a long time.
Mhm.
So, there have been times I've done it and I have brought in the family constellation piece,
Mhm.
because I think, yeah, I'm really open to this. I'll just give you a quick example. May I? Just a
Sure,
quick
sure, for
example.
sure.
Yeah. So, um, at one point, my number one passion was to feel supported by the universe. That was my number one passion, because
Mhm.
I had experiences when I was younger, very young, that led me to believe that I was all alone. There was nobody there for me.
Mm.
So that was really my number one passion. This was a number of years ago. Now, intellectually, I thought to myself, yeah, I believe that. I believe I'm supported by the universe. I discovered prayer and non-denominational prayer and surrendering, over to something greater and so on and so forth. So I've done a lot of work around this being supported piece. I did systemic constellations, which is really quite fascinating, and I won't go into how I do it right
Mhm.
now because I know we don't have a lot of time, but what came out of the systemic constellations revealed to me that in my marrow, the marrow of my bones, in my organs, I am carrying the belief that life is not supportive. My mother's mother
Mhm.
my mother's mother had polio as a baby and never learned to walk without crutches. So, in an unconscious way, my mother, maybe even my grandmother, maybe even my great grandmother believed life wasn't fair, life wasn't kind, life
Right.
wasn't supportive. That
Mhm.
was one side. My father's mother died of breast cancer very early on in his life. So same piece. So in on
Interesting.
both sides, and we often find this in constellation work, that both sides are unconsciously carrying a similar wound, or in this case, a belief that life is not kind, it's not supportive, it's not friendly, right?
Mhm.
And so how could I ever have discovered that just coaching?
No, I know. There's so much to coaching that is unconscious. That
And
so
how's that going
we're
to
very
rise?
lucky that
Yeah.
we do both.
Exactly, exactly. And then the breath work comes in to support, as we've been talking about, impart
Sure.
the energy that wants to be acknowledged or released, whether that's
Mhm.
emotional or insights or so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
How
just
freeing is that? I mean, for our clients to have that experience. Well, we both have had this experience ourselves.
mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that it doesn't, first of all, change doesn't have to take 10 years. What is it? 95% of what we do is unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
If we're only working with the conscious mind, yeah, we can muscle it. But
Mm-hmm.
gosh, it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
nice to go back into those programs and find out where things started.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, what I find even in the work that I do, as far as going back in the past, sometimes we'll unearth a root cause of something. Some people might think, oh my God, I'm going to open up Pandora's box. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
Pandora's box. It's like a simple little, maybe it was a simple, stupid little look that our parent gave at one time where the child, made the meaning that they were stupid just because of that look,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
under the age of 7, you're pretty concrete in how you think. And so, just uncovering that. So it's not always that you have these huge, deep wounds. Sometimes you'll find that it's not that at all. But I think most of the time we find is it's really, most of these belief systems we've owned from the past, our past, generational past. And when we uncover them, it's so revealing. And
Mm-hmm.
then we can choose another way.
And liberating. So I love that you said freedom, because to me, this is why I do this work personally.
Right.
Personally, I
Yeah.
want to be free. So, for example, when I see that I have the opportunity to go in somewhere and to face maybe a painful event, or, sometimes, like you said, what might appear to us to be inconsequential as an adult was, traumatizing
Right.
as a child, right?
Right.
Um, but I run towards those experiences. I run because that's my freedom. I want to be free
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
be the most authentic version of myself, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
always surprising to me when, so I don't want to go there. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm. Well,
I
because
do. I
yeah, you
totally
embrace
do.
it. You embrace it, right?
I run towards it. I literally run towards it. Sign me up,
Mhm.
right?
Well, because the other thing is it gives us back choice,
Exactly.
and then that leads to freedom.
hmm
And yeah, that's beautiful, Gwen. And so, how long have you been doing all this?
Um, well, let's see. I mean, yoga, a long time, 40 years, breath work professionally, 20 years,
Wow.
dance, most of the things that I do are somewhere between the 15 and 20-year
That
range.
is something. Wow. That
Yeah.
so people can come and work with you.
hmm
They can do an intensive, like a 3-day intensive.
Yeah. Or I
Um,
do individual sessions. I also do a weekly group online breath work. I
okay,
just did
good. We'll
this
put all
morning.
those links below so you will
Ab-
everybody will have some
yeah.
access to that.
hmm
Yeah, and then and so you do the breath work online. Eventually you'll be back in person when things get cleared up. And then the
I just,
family.
yeah,
Oh,
I just want to say this that I pretty much do everything that I do in person. I can do it online, family constellations included. One of the things about this particular time when we're having to take our work online
yeah.
is well, it kind of gave me a kick in the butt because I'd been meaning to for a while. I just hadn't gotten around to it. And now, I've developed my platforms and so on and so forth. And
Right.
it feels amazing because, for example, this morning when I did my group breath work, I had somebody from Tunisia, I had people in England, I had people from all over the US.
Hmm.
And that is even more enhancing of this. Um, Idea or feeling of oneness or connection, or that there's we're really all the same underneath it all.
Hmm.
And that is something that I have embraced. I want to say most of my life I grew up multiculturally, so I had a very diverse background of being born in Italy and growing up in Tunisia, and going to schools in Europe, and all of my schooling was done with many different nationalities, and so there was never one way to be, never one way to think, never one way to do. And I think that that has really informed me as a person and also my work.
For sure. And it makes you, I can just say, from my personal experience with you, you're so open, so it's like you came into this work being very, your world was you had a big world. A
hmm
lot of
hmm
times people that are coming into to work with us are coming in and they've had a lot of trauma, there's a lot of fear, and their world becomes really super small. But
mm
as they feel more comfortable, all of a sudden their world is enlarges, and they get to be more open to different experiences. And you just bring that openness to everyone. I
mm.
mean, I could just watch how people interact with you, and you just are very comfortable to be around. And that is because you've been able to experience that
hmm
and hold this container for people to explore who they are in a very accepting way.
Thank you. I really feel that. And I receive that because, in part having grown up in this, big world, um, didn't always feel very good to me. I mean, it was exciting, it was adventurous, but I didn't really have an anchor. I didn't have religion. I didn't have, an extended family where we were living. Um, I mean, I didn't have the one way. And sometimes I wished I did. I would be,
Right.
like, gosh, I wish I, felt as stable as that person, or that I had rooting somewhere. But
Mhm.
what that led me to is to find that anchoring and rooting within myself. And I
Right.
think that's one of the biggest pieces of the work and the way that of my work and the way that I teach, because that first breathwork session that I
Mhm.
had was absolutely exquisite. And
Mhm.
at the same time, w- the practitioner, and not right or wrong, good or bad, just just different, didn't share with me one of the most um, powerful things that I like to share with people, is that what you experience in the breathwork is within you. It's
Right.
not created by the breath work.
Mhm.
I'm not putting anything in you. You came home to something that is always, in fact, there,
Mhm.
right? And so that's a big principle of my work. And, I have had a pretty lived life, meaning I've had a lot of traumas. I've had a lot of wonderful things. I've had a
Mhm.
lot of
Right.
things, period,
Mhm.
across the board. And I will say that I, bring a lot of compassion and understanding,
Mhm.
because I've lived a lot. I really
Right.
have. Yeah.
What do you feel like you're most grateful for as far as all of this? Like, like I was writing after the breathwork session today, I was writing a letter to me
Mm,
and saying what I see in me. So, what do you most? I hesitate to use the word proud, but because I don't want it to sound egoish. Or what do you just feel so? What do you love the most about you that
mm.
you bring to the world?
Let me just feel into that for a moment,
Yeah.
just so that I really respond authentically. Well, I think, in part that authenticity,
Mm,
I mean, and I continue to work at that, stripping away the layers of conditioning and imprinting.
mhm,
But that, I think what's coming up for me now is just that, like, unwavering commitment
mm,
to be real.
yeah.
And that it's a process. I'm not there yet. I'm not like, oh, I've arrived, right? No, I mean, but I am so dedicated to that. I'm
Mhm,
so dedicated to
mm,
embodying anything that I'm sharing with people.
mhm,
And you may remember that in my journeys, I often talk about this. And, in part, this is like borrowed from Jeff Foster. I love how he talks about, this messy, glorious humanity of ours, right?
mhm,
That, there's no pedestal. Let's
mhm.
please not put anybody on a pedestal. Um, let's just, learn how to embrace all of us and
Yeah.
know that we mess up, and
Yep.
we also are brilliant, and everything in between.
Mhm.
And um and I love that. I love that ability to, yeah, that feels really tender in me sometimes, to really look at myself going, oh wow, that was really human of me. Daily.
Did I just say that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Daily.
did that slip out of my mouth?
Yeah. But yeah, that this tattoo right here, this is emoto. So emoto, for those of you that don't know, is a Japanese scientist that discovered that if you project emotion into water, the water forms into different crystals when it freezes,
Yeah.
different crystalline structures when it freezes. And this is truth, right? So I'm kind of a truth warrior,
Wow.
and this is on my masculine side.
Mhm,
Masculine side is like, I am a truth warrior.
mhm.
And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about myself.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love when I can ask that type of question with, you know, to someone and um, we have been so conditioned in life to not take a compliment or you can't toot your own horn or you can't say what you're proud of or whatever. And I really believe that we're coming to a different way of being, that we're always looking, a lot of people are looking to the outside for that love. That love is outside of themselves, and that love really is within ourselves. And today, starting that meditation or my journaling, and about writing, I wrote a love letter to me.
Oh,
And
love
God,
that.
it was beautiful, but it's the same about really embracing the totality of us.
Mhm.
It's the totality of us that makes us us.
Mhm.
That's the texture, that's the, definition, that's the, all of that that makes us the richness of us. And it also allows other people to be themselves as well. So, it used to be, and I fight with myself on this, where people they had a thread of needle. I have a needle to, be my friend. There's no messing up, because I
Mm.
didn't allow myself to mess up. And now I haven't reached the top either, but I will tell you this: I am much more forgiving of myself. Therefore,
Mm-hmm.
I am much more forgiving of others. I
Mm-hmm.
don't, the pedestal thing, boy, it's far to fall.
Mm.
I don't want
Right.
to, I don't want to be there, you know?
Well, and what you're describing, Sandra, is intimacy.
Mm,
So, intimacy with ourselves. And, how can we possibly be intimate with another if we can't be
for
intimate with
sure.
ourselves? But this is not what we've been taught. We've been taught to pour ourselves into the external relationships, right?
Right.
Without being present to ourselves. So to
Hmm.
me, the definition of self-love is cultivating a relationship with myself, like that beautiful love letter that you wrote, like the
Hmm.
breath work, where
Hmm.
we come face to face with ourselves.
Hmm.
And most of us, until we start to do that, are ignoring ourselves, abandoning ourselves, blaming, shaming, guilting ourselves, even abusing ourselves,
Hmm.
hoping that if we pour ourselves just that much more into a relationship outside of ourselves, we'll finally get the love, the respect, the honoring that we are desperately longing for. But we won't, because if it's not here, it's not going to show up on the outside. What's going to show up on the outside is what's happening in here. This is the number one relationship right here. It all
Hmm.
starts right here.
Hmm.
And it's an inside job.
Yeah, it's an inside job. This is so cool. Well, Gwen, I have to say I am honored. I'm touched, as far, my heart gets touched every time we have a conversation. You are so open, authentic, loving, kind, generous. It's just, I want to pinch myself at times, because I just can't, to believe that I attracted someone like you and another person like you. And my world just gets bigger and bigger with people that are really willing to do the work. They're willing
Mm.
to look within. They're willing to guide people to be their best. And, and this whole perfection thing is, we're perfectly imperfect. And
Exactly.
that's the perfection within us. So I just am so thrilled that I attracted you into my life. And it couldn't have been more magical. You can't make up
Mhm.
this stuff. You just can't.
I receive all of that, Sandra. And at the same time, your description made me think, and that's you, that's you, that's you, that's you.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I
Well,
love it.
okay, so we're going to put all of your contact information below, so people can contact you. And I know that if anybody chooses to give Gwen a call, you will be in awe of your experience with this wonderful woman. So thank
Oh,
you, Gwen.
thank you. I really appreciate being given the opportunity to be on this Thriveology podcast with you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thriveology of living.
The Thriveology of living. Yes, absolutely. I love it.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Much love.
Bye.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.